Hello. The Silent Voice has a very distinct soundtrack, and by that I don't mean, but instead the other original songs written by Kensuke Ushio. The ambient, melancholic, and somewhat hopeful nostalgic sounds remind me of other notable pieces such as C418's Sweden. The 2016 film features a more raw and natural sound, one which evokes a very ANEMOIA response from myself. Is that a word? With the very recent release of Japan Sings, soundtrack done by none other than Kensuke Ushio, I decided I'd attempt to create an original piece inspired by the Shape of Light album in under an hour. But first, let's dissect one of his songs. Take the song Lit Va. It is speculated that lit means light, a notion or motif which is thoroughly explored throughout the duration of the film. I'm completely unsure of the va part, but I assume it stands for variant, as there are other versions of the lit song. This is one of my favourites on the album, not only because of the extremely soothing nature of the song, but how the song progresses from feeling lonely and vacant into opening your eyes and finally seeing the light at around 44 seconds. This is, to me, one of the most powerful pieces of music I've heard in a movie soundtrack, and out of the countless hours I've spent consuming movies and shows, it is one of the only ones I can vividly recall. For my piece, I started with my acoustic guitar, something I don't usually do. I picked the guitar because, well, it's one of the only actual instruments I've got. I decided to start messing around live rather than in MIDI, because I feel like I'd come up with something more organic and simple to play live rather than digitally, something which is extremely prominent in a lot of the songs on the album. I came up with this very simple melody and recorded it on my phone using voice memos so I didn't forget it. This is the loop I recorded. I then re-recorded this into FL using Edison and made sure the time was somewhat correct. Not exactly though. A lot of the songs don't have perfect on-the-point 4/4 timing in order to maintain the natural and more human sound. I then put this aside and saved it for later, as I knew it was going to be more of a background instrument. Next, I got out my grand piano and played a marvelous chord progression interchanging between 3 octaves. Next, I opened FL's MIDI window and drew in the same melody I played on my guitar. For this sort of organic sound, I messed around in Keyscape with the release and pedal noise, then upped the makeup game on the compressor, and somehow managed this somewhat similar noisy and natural sound on the softer preset in the library. I made sure that all my notes that I'd played had an incredibly quiet velocity as, again, the songs on the album were very softly played. I then decided I'd make the main bulk of the song in one pattern, that is to encourage me to add more variation on the piano rather than adding in more complex and cluttering instruments. For the first 8 bars, I played this high melody and transitioned into the main melody with some simple bass chords. They were the same ones I played on the guitar, plus extra to add some thickness to the sound. For the build-up, I added this orchestral cymbal transition and then added the first synth. The sound was a basic saw wave with an LFO modulating the positions of the wavetable, followed by a frequency filter muting the higher ends. I then automated this to open up as the first drop played. In the drop, I first added a very muted and softish kick I found from some random pack on r/drumkits. To add to this section, I also added a choir to help invoke the euphoric feeling the character gets when they see the lit or light for the first time. Also added this pluck in the second half of the section to make it more interesting and continue building up the song for the final release, that is the end section. I added this pluck at the very beginning of the drop, and finally added this bizarre sound I found in one of the Serum Misc presets. It reminded me a lot of another song called I Can Say Nothing. This particular sound really ties the entire track together. To conclude this short piece, I created a separate pattern from the original piano and added in the same melody pattern except an octave higher. Then to finish off the track, I ended it with a resolving A major chord. Now I don't know much about chord theory, but this extra chord on the end really helps relieve the listener, as throughout the entirety, 2 chords have been repeating and continuing without any resolution to them, so I figured a final chord to tie it all together would suit the track really well. Also, I dragged the end of the note out another 4 bars to emphasize the ambience and the finishing of a piece. Here is the song, and thank you for watching.